I don't know how to give background to this. This is just from like hearing random story. This is just background of being a classmate with Sydney. I know that you've sustained a lot of injuries over your own personal athletic career. That's the best backstory I can give all of you listeners. I'm sorry, I don't know exactly how to set that up for you, but Sydney's gone through a lot of different injuries, and I think there's some fun stories in there. So, exactly how many injuries have you sustained?
Oh, so I never had an injury my entire life. I never even like sprained my ankle or did anything until sophomore year. So sophomore year, it's soccer season. It wasn't even soccer, it was preseason. So this was summer soccer. And I'm like, man, my knee's been like really hurting. And I'm like, oh, it'll be fine. And then I went to the doctors and like, should I get like x-rays? She goes, no, 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 you should just start going to physical therapy. That'll help everything. So I go to physical therapy for like 2 months. I'm like lessening on soccer, like I wasn't allowed to run. And then it was like 2 months of PT. And I'm like, well, it's regular season now. I'm still missing out. What's wrong with my knee? It's not getting any better. It's actually getting worse. So he's like, oh, I feel like we should go get x-rays. And I'm like, I said, we should get x-rays from the beginning. And then they look at it and they're like, oh my gosh, it's actually broken. I'm like, lovely. I'm like, so I've just been running on a broken shin for like 3 months. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, good to know. So then, oh, another fun story about that one. So I have lots of fun stories. So they took a side-by-side of like both of my knees together to see what was wrong. And then they didn't call me. I had practice that day, so I was just sitting on the sideline. The athletic trainer for my school comes up to me and he's like, Sydney, and I'm like, what? And he's like, so they were just looking at your x-rays, and I'm like, yeah. And he's like, and they found some sort of like lump or mass or something in your other leg. I'm like, okay. So they were x-raying my left leg to see if it was broken, and they found a tumor in my right leg. I'm like, this is great. This is exactly what I need right now. So the people that did the x-rays and everything, they're orthopedic, not oncology. So as soon as they see a thing, they started freaking out. And I'm like, guys, it's not that big a deal. It's fine. Like it's probably nothing. But they're not used to seeing anything cancer related. So they're like, oh my gosh, you have to go to Boston right now. Like we'll make you an appointment for tomorrow, all this stuff. And I'm like, it's probably fine. It's probably fine. So everyone's freaking out about the right leg. And then we figured it out. It wasn't like, it's not cancerous. It's just up. It's just there. It's still there right now. It's just chilling. And then they finally went back and looked at the x-rays, looked back at the other leg, which was the problem in the first place, and went, oh, it's broken. You need to be in a cast for 6 weeks. I'm like, okay, thanks. So it was from my hip to my ankle. And I'm like, this is great. This is my whole soccer season. But if I had done it like 3 months ago when I said it in the first place, and I'm like, it's fine. But PT made me super strong. So then I was in a cast for the whole season. Come back to next soccer season. And yeah, so that was sophomore year. So then this is the beginning of junior year. And I'm like, my knee is hurting again. It was the same knee. It was the left knee. And they're like, oh, well, you partially tore your meniscus. And you developed like a plico, which is just this inflammation tissue due to it being in a cast for so long. So I'm like, that's just great. So I just didn't tell my coach. I just suffered through. It's okay. Come softball season. No, it wasn't softball season. It was wintertime. So this was junior year. Junior year was a little rough. So I decided I was going to play basketball. I only had 6 people on the team. So I'm like, oh, I'll help you guys out. I can't play basketball to save my life, but I'll try. So I also did, which is apparently not a thing like anywhere else, like down here, indoor softball. Just doesn't, see, it just doesn't.
Never heard of that.
Yeah,
So-
it's not really a thing.
Yeah, so we played it through the winter. It was just at a big turf facility. So they had batting cages on the side. So we'd have batting every Friday night. And then we had games and scrimmages and everything on the turf. We just made it like a smaller field. So I had indoor softball. I went to go slide into second base, and my hand got caught under me like that, and my thumb went back. And I'm like, oof, I don't think I should be hearing snapping sounds. I'm like, that's not good. So it was immediately like huge swollen bruise. I kept playing. I finished out the game. And then I'm like, dude, I think I just broke my thumb. I said that to my friend. And her mom was standing right there. And her mom's a nurse. She's like, Sydney, let me see. I'm like, no, it's fine. It's fine. Because I'm like, it's not, I didn't think it was actually broken. I'm like, it's not that bad. Like, it hurt, but it's not that bad. And then she looks at it and she immediately took me over to my mom. She's like, so Sydney has something to tell you. I'm like, no, I don't. No, I don't. I didn't do anything. And my parents have always been very like, oh, brush it off. You're fine. Like, rub some dirt on it type thing. They're not go to the hospital and do this and whatever. And they were both like, we're going to get x-rays. I'm like, no, it's okay. It's fine. It's fine. So I spent the night and then I went to school the next day. I couldn't move my whole hand. I'm like typing on my computer like this. And I'm like, yeah, mom, it's pretty bad. I went to the doctors. They're like, oh, you snapped the bone in half. I'm like, lovely. So I had to call the basketball coach the night before the first game. And I said, hey, I'm in a camp class. So that was fun.
Wow.
And they actually let me play in like one of the last games of the season. They let me go in. I had the full cast on my hand, couldn't do anything, but I tried my best. And I got fouled. And everyone got so excited for me. They're like, hey, you can shoot free throws. So I'm at the line. This is how I shoot. I have the ball in my hand. In my left hand, both of them bounced off the rim. I was so close to shooting and making points in a game with a cast on my hand. But it didn't work out.
That would have been bragging rights forever. Like,
Oh,
I made a shot. Some NBA players, they've played with like the masks on for like broken noses and whatnot. I played with a cast on and scored.
Literally. And I would have been talking about it to the other team too. I'm like, you let a cripple do that to you? No, the thumb heals. On to the next one.
Yeah.
And so the thumb heals, and then junior softball season, I was playing shortstop, and I ran over to second base to cover. And you know how you like drop your knee down behind the ball to like shield it, right? So I went to do that, and I stood back up, and I'm like, oh, that's not right. I look down, there's like this like little thing on the side of my knee. So I'm like, I think I just dislocated my knee. I think I just popped it back into place. So I'm standing on the field and I'm like, ooh, that was really painful. And then I'm like hobbling off the field. My coach goes, Sydney, you need to hustle. I said, Coach, I can't walk right now. So I go up to the trainer and I'm like, I think I just dislocated my knee. And he's like, no, that'd be like really painful. I'm like, it was pretty painful. I'm like, yeah, I pushed it back in. And he's like, I don't think you did, that really hurt. And I'm like, pretty high pain tolerance. I'm okay. So I went to the doctors, I got x-rays, and the doctors were all like, no, that'd be really difficult. And then they see the x-rays, they're like, oh my gosh, you dislocated your knee and popped it back in. I'm like, almost like I told you that. So that was definitely the worst injury, because when your muscles are made, this is your joint, a little anatomy lesson. So your muscles are made to hold everything into place. So when all of a sudden it just yanks everything and then it goes back in, which you're not supposed to do. If you ever dislocate something, don't put it back in yourself, because I mess everything up. But yeah, that one that still hurts like all the time. Like if I like squat down and stand up, it just like moves out of place a little bit, which is so fun. So if you ever see me like walking around and like adjusting, I'm pushing my knee back into its socket, which is always fun. But that was probably the worst injury, because it just tears everything. But I didn't need surgery or anything, so it was good. And I think that's most of them.
The moral of these stories has been like the doctors not listening to Sydney and Sydney being right.
Exactly. I'm like, you think I would know what I'm talking about? I was there. And they're like, yeah. But the dislocation, they're like, that would be like really difficult to do. And I'm like, I stood on the field and went, and they're like, because there's this thing you can do where it just kind of like moves a little bit and then goes back into place. I'm like, no, I pushed it. Like, I don't think so. And then they're like, wow, based on your tests, I'm like, I know, I did it.
We told a lot of stories about it's not an injury, but like we don't have to get into all the details. But I feel like when you have someone on the podcast who has a titanium skull, it has to be brought up in some form. So whatever you want to tell the people about that, go for it. You don't have to tell the whole story.
So how I was saying earlier, I was so nonchalant. I'm like, oh, there's a tumor in my knee. It's not that bad. It's because I already had one in my head. So in 6th grade, I'm brushing my hair and there's this weird bump. And I'm like, that's not good. Long story short, there was a tumor in there. It was like golf ball, I think they said, ish. And it like broke through my skull. So there was just no skull left. I'm like, oh, this is so fun. And so it wasn't cancerous. I didn't need chemo or anything. It was just a tumor. So all I needed was surgery. So they just, I was going to say, wait, is your scar on the right side or the left side?
On the left side.
Oh, mine's on the right. I was going to say, we have matching scars. Mine's like along here like that. And it was 27 stitches, I think. Something like that. Yeah, it starts there and goes down to there. It's pretty solid. It healed really nicely. Like you can barely even see it. But yeah, they had to put so the plate itself is actually plastic, but it's like plastic that's harder than metal, I guess. So it's a plastic plate and then it has titanium screws holding it in. So I'm like, oh yeah, I got titanium in my head. But this, I can't feel any of it. It's totally numb.